Okay, so welcome to the AI in Manufacturing podcast here on Industry4.tv. I'm your host, Gudzai Manditeresa, and today we will discuss maximizing OEE and production line safety with video AI agents. And I'm joined in this session by KARIM Saleh, who is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Serion. So welcome to the show, KARIM, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Jose.
Awesome. So maybe to kick things off here, could you briefly introduce yourself to our audience and maybe share a bit of a backstory to how you founded the company?
Sure, sure. So, my name is KARIM. I'm the co-founder of Serion, and essentially we develop video AI agents or like digital workers to help manufacturers reduce losses as well as maximize production line safety in the manufacturing industry. And the back story of that is I was once visiting a plant and we were walking around watching, okay, like learning more about what's happening, and the production line started to jam up. Nobody realized that, and then at some point the operator realized, okay, there is an issue. He jumped into the line, sprinted towards it, and tried to resolve it ASAP. And it did, at that point, it seemed like a very, first of all, like it's a very high risk situation for the operator, right? And I also have the feeling, okay, there is a better way to do it. And since I saw it with my eyes, the idea was, hey, we can leverage AI and video to augment current workforce, increase visibility on what's happening, and help them react faster to problems automatically and prevent these issues from happening in the first place.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that kind of like really, resonate a lot with the many people that, they go into a factory for the first time. There's so much, stuff to solve, and it kind of like speaks to, I think earlier this morning I was reading one of your posts where you were talking about how, all of the startups are going to solving, things in the sales and marketing, but so manufacturing remains, untapped largely as far as the problem that needs to be solved are concerned. So because I had the same problem as you when I first went into a factory and I saw it ridiculous just seeing a lot of people walking around with pen and paper taking things down and things like that. So
I think the challenge, so I think from one side, like people generally like take everything we have today for granted, right? They don't realize, hey, like there is a huge supply chain in the backbone. There is a lot of factories, a lot of people actually working very hard to make sure we get our basic needs fulfilled. And the other part is that it's actually quite a hard problem, right? Like solving in manufacturing, building for manufacturing is not that easy because if you go into a factory, it's a very complex, everything is very intertwined, which also creates a great opportunity, right? Because like the whole idea of Serion is that you have these big production lines. It's super hard to stay on top of everything. It's super hard to have like a worker at every critical
yeah.
production area. And that's why we should deploy video AI agents, which at least mimic what the operator would do if they were constantly at the same focusing on this area and help them react faster to issues, right? And resolve them before they happen. And I think this challenging environment is also like a very cool space for people to build technology to solve for.
Okay. Absolutely. So maybe let's kind of like take a step back here to kind of like really understand the fundamental challenges. So you kind of like went into a factory, there was this incident. So obviously that triggered a whole lot of, research on your part. So up until today, what have you seen as kind of like being the biggest challenges that, prevent manufacturers from achieving efficiency and also achieving the safety?
Yeah, I think there's two main themes, right? One is the general workforce shortages, right? So manufacturing are struggling to hire more skilled people. A lot of people are retiring. They're also struggling to retain people. So the challenge is happening here. You have smaller workforces which still need to manage the same operation as before, and sometimes even expanding operations. So these workers are spread super thin. So how do you help them? Essentially manage stable operation and not completely burn out. So that's one theme. And the second one is, okay, if you look at what is the biggest thing challenging the current workforce, it's actually intransparency about when things go wrong and why they go wrong, right? Because if everything was running stable, you could actually run a factory completely autonomous and everything would be happy. But that's not the case today, right? Things still go wrong and for a multitude of reasons, right? Because of the complexity we mentioned before. And here it's key, like how do you react fast and how do you make sure that you also have the transparency and the visibility to take the right corrective action so problems don't reappear again. So we looked at these two themes, one workforce shortages and the other one in transparency. And we thought, okay, how can we solve this in the easiest and simplest way, which enables us also to gain traction quickly, because as we know, manufacturing is a conservative industry. You need to be able to provide quick wins fast. And that's essentially was our guiding principle in how we thought about Serion.
Okay. So, I mean, one would argue that these are problems that have been, in manufacturing for decades and decades, and there's been, attempt, or rather, there are, some measures in place right now to address these efficiency and safety issues. In your view, what are kind of like the how have these traditional methods sort of like fallen short in as
Yeah.
far as addressing these issues?
So I think like if you think also like of vision, right, or computer vision manufacturing, there has been computer vision manufacturing for 20 years now. The challenge which was there is because the manufacturing industry is so fragmented that essentially every industry looks has different challenges, looks different. Even if you go into one production line, the different processes are completely different and require completely different solutions. So even having like an end-to-end solution was super hard with traditional technology. But what happened is that with the advancements in deep learning, right, and in AI in general, it enabled you to build technology that doesn't need to be tailor-made and customized because it can like you can leverage self-supervised learning and so on. So have technology that can scale very easily and be deployed in a plug-and-play manner. So that is, I think, a turning point for the manufacturing industry where you can now it's the first time possible where you can actually build use case agnostic and scalable, which enables you not to cater just like one manufacturer at a time, but a whole set of players in different verticals, right? And I think that was for us the switching point. And on the other side, on the market side, manufacturers have become more like these issues which I talked about like increasing costs and workforce shortage, etc., has become so severe that they're actually willing now to invest and take money in their hands and think in the future in a way that I think wasn't there before.
Okay, so maybe could you kind of like give us, examples of the application of AI or video AI
Yeah.
technology?
So let's think of an example, right? You have a CPG production line, right? Where you're producing, I don't know, Coca-Cola bottles. You have you're producing 600 bottles a minute, right? And then something goes wrong at some point. So for example, a bottle falls down somewhere. If it continues to go along the way and then reaches like a critical machine, it might jump up the production and you will have waste, safety risk, right? Like because you have glass everywhere on the floor, you will have unplanned downtime. You need to clean everything up and you lose all of this OEE, right? And what happens with video AI is that now you can see, okay, I see a fallen bottle moving around, like it fell at position Y, and now I can automatically intervene by either rejecting or stopping the line before it leads to a crash, right? So it's exactly by having this supervision or this eye in the sky, making sure that everything is running as it should, and being able to act proactively and prevent issues from escalating, right? And the good thing is about how we do it because we leverage video, which is a very standard sensor, right? You can put a video camera anywhere across a production line. And we leverage self-supervised AI. That means AI that learns on its own how the normal process should look like. This approach can scale, first of all, to the different areas on a production line, to different issues which can occur, but also to different manufacturers in the same way.
So when you say self-supervised learning, does it mean that there is no, instances where you need to be able to where you need to train that video AI to be able to kind of like recognize these different incidents?
Yes, exactly. The whole idea is you have a base anomaly detection model, which is like a foundational model. You deploy it on a specific process, and it's already can, without having any understanding before of what kind of problems can happen, it can already learn the normal process and detect deviations. But then through user feedback, you then can fine tune it. Like we have a thumbs up, thumbs down mechanism where then the user can provide feedback on what actually the issues they care about and classify them and what things for them are daily business.
Okay, that's super interesting. Now, another interesting aspect. So I remember when I was kind of like really preparing for this session, you mentioned this idea that you are sort of like integrating rather video AI agents, as it were. I kind of like want to sort of like understand how could you kind of like walk us through how agents actually work as far, or video AI agents rather actually work as far as solving these issues that is concerned.
Exactly. So I think the traditional like computer vision applications were just like about monitoring solutions, right? You have a monitoring system that detects issues and then it's left to the human to decide what to do with this information and so on, right? So you're always required to have the human in the loop. But with recent advancements, you can move in the direction of agent. The idea is not just detection, but it's detection and response and action, right? So you can have the full closed loop done completely automatically. So essentially, the with a video, like it knows what's happening on the production line. It can reason and understand the different contexts. So okay, now I have a bottle fallen, but the line is running at X speed. So because of that, I need to stop the line now and issue an alarm. So you can really have like this reasoning power and instruct these agents to act and respond to these production issues based on like best practices, just like a human would. So we don't need to have the human in the loop anymore, but you can really have closed loop actions, at least for some specific cases.
So I guess closed loop. So I've had a conversation with a number of vendors or founders rather, and closed loop sort of like automation kind of like comes up a lot, and some seem to kind of like really shy away from this idea that we are ready to have a closed loop AI system. What is your view on that? Do you first like pushback from manufacturers, or how cautious are you about kind of like having a closed loop AI system?
Actually, like our customers were the ones that pushed us into the direction of going closed loop, right? Like we started out of just like, hey, we detect issues, we give you the information about what's happening, you take continuous improvement action, etc. And they're the ones, okay, great, you want to act. So I think there are two components on that. First, you want to build trust first, right? Like you first want to say, hey, the technology is reliable, it's transparent, they understand how it works and why it would act in a specific way. And that's a prerequisite always before going into the direction, right? Like I don't encourage anyone to just like from day one be deploying automation in factory floors, especially if they can already showcase value and deliver ROI as a standalone, right? So that's like the first step. And the second step is it's also you need to identify what are the quick wins closed loop actions you can perform, right? Like I'm not saying that you just like we're not at the stage yet where you have like this AI brain which can optimize all parameters and everything on the production line so it can run completely autonomously, but at least for some simple actions, it should be done in closed loop. So, for example, if you see an issue happening, you should be able to stop the line automatically without waiting for it to escalate and become to a larger issue, right? If you see bottlenecks building up, you should be able to adjust line speeds to make sure like it resolves on its own. So there are some like I would say like basic intelligent actions, right? Like so this super basic low-hanging fruit where we today are at this point where AI can actually do that in a reliable and robust manner, as long as you provide full transparency and full control to the end user, to the production team to decide how they want to handle different scenarios.
Okay, so it's really is about trust and transparency, right? For you to be able to
Yes,
trust. Okay,
exactly.
awesome. Right, so maybe let's dig deeper into your offering, the Serion video AI platform. Could you kind of like break down for us like the different so I noticed you've got process fault AI, downtime AI, line speed AI, and line output AI. Could you kind of like break down all of these offerings for us?
At the end of the day, like our ideas, our ideas following, right? Like you have a camera which can detect a lot of things, right? And the idea is that today, based on the current state of technology, there are some kind of visual triggers you can deploy as a plug and play manner through this self-supervised approach, right? And these are everything really from process anomalies, right? Like things like misalignments on the production line, jam ups, issues in line speed, right? Bottlenecks building up, buffer fill levels, and so on. So really like these visual triggers where a human would, if we're looking at the video, would directly identify. And over time, then we would like what we want to do is in, as technology matures and evolves, increase the list of triggers or the use cases our AI can detect and act on. Right. So that's how we approach it. So it's really you have this platform which has like these main four components. It's monitoring. You can put a camera integrated as seamlessly as possible from already existing infrastructure, wherever you are. Then you have the detection. Hey, you can have different anomalies you can detect based on like this self-supervised manner. And then you have action. You have different actions you can take, which the list will expand over time as you build more trust and you get deeper understanding of the process. And then you have this enablement, which is the platform, the dashboard, where you can troubleshoot issues, see videos of the incidents, see the data and everything in this direction, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And that enables you to give like the production teams a very modular way where they today can have a quick wins and over time then expand with you to more use cases, more production areas they monitor, more things they detect on already areas they monitor, but also more actions they can do.
Okay. So does it mean so kind of like going back to sort of like the categorization of the different kinds of AI, does this mean that is you've got a specific model? So for example, for downtime monitoring, you've got a specific model for like process fault monitoring, or it's really just one model with different outputs?
It's one module with different outputs, right? And the limit of to what granularity it can get improves as long as the fundamental technology improves, right? Like as we see more advancements in vision language models, etc., it enables us to do much more things in a plug and play manner.
Oh, I see. And then maybe let's talk about kind of like the workflow or rather the experience of working within your platform, kind of like to give our audience an idea. So is it like a low code platform? What kind of skills are required? Who gets to work on it? Who's the target user and so on?
So essentially, our target user are the operations teams, right? So we're talking really of line leaders, shift leaders, and production managers. Therefore, of course, it doesn't require any technical understanding how AI works and so on, right? It really is this a very basic dashboard. You can think of like navigating like YouTube and giving thumbs up, thumbs down feedback on what you like and what you don't like. So that's essentially what we're building in mind is how can you give production teams the power to deploy and use vision AI applications in a very easy manner without needing to change their workflows. So, for example, we've looked, okay, how do operations teams work today? Every day in the morning, there is a shift meeting where you look at, hey, what are the biggest areas of opportunities, etc. So our question is, how can we embed Serion in there, right? So they can use Serion's Pareto to understand what are the biggest problems, see the video footage, and so on. The manufacturing teams like to have reports, right? They want to understand and at the end of the day understand where they stand, what they did, and how they can improve. So we build a customizable like alert as a reporting workflow where they can say, hey, if this problem happens X times, alert this stakeholder and so on and escalate it from there. And I think like our philosophy is how do we become like consumer software to manufacturing in that sense.
Awesome. So you kind of like maybe it's a good point to talk about the implementation rather roadmap or the kind of
Yeah.
like the deployment timeline. So suppose a manufacturer engages you today, what
Yeah.
does that roadmap look like, and what is the deployment timeline from the time they engage you to the time they start getting value, start getting actionable insights out of your platform?
So we oftentimes work with manufacturers who already have existing cameras in place, right? So they already had installed like CCTV cameras to other the critical areas because they want to have this overview, right? Like you see sometimes these big video walls where they have low utility, but like they're already there. And in this case, like the implementation is the fastest, right? If they don't have, we then would supply them off-the-shelf hardware, which the electrical team can install. Standard camera installation, right? It's very basic. But assuming they have this cameras in place, what we do is we ship a server unit, which has like the GPUs in it, so it can run the AI inference on site. And then like in a week, it's in the plant, right? And the only thing we need to do is, of course, we go through the IT, making sure that we get all of the approvals needed. We get access to our server. We connect the server to the cameras. And at the point where we have access to the cameras, actually after 2, 3 days, the AI already starts populating the dashboard with initial detections. So actually, from that, like it's a very quick win because we use kind of directly implementing existing hardware. It's self-supervised and that the AI is self-supervised. So we can already, after 4 days, give them the initial results, and then over time, based on the feedback, right, like it's fine-tuned to their specific needs. And what we usually see that after like 2 weeks at this point, the AI is fine-tuned in a way that actually they can start triggering automatic actions based on that, right? And initially, our customers start, as you mentioned, because we want to build trust, with just like simple notifications or alarms, right? So they connect to their alarming system, alerting systems, and so on. And then after these 2 weeks, after they have that trust for maybe 2, 3 additional weeks, they can start then thinking about closed loop actions, right? So first point where they start really getting some value is like these 2, 3 days from camera connection, right? Because they already see, okay, what's going on in their production. This value that jump first happens once they start integrating it with the alerting systems, because they see reaction time to issues go down. And then full ROI capture happens after then they start really integrating it with their processes and the existing infrastructure.
Awesome. Yeah, so another issue that I want to kind of like talk to you about is this the idea of integrating how your platform integrates with kind of like existing OT or IT systems. So because in many cases, so you talk about this idea of closing the loop, and they also are scenarios where you kind of like want to use an insight generated by your platform to sort of like trigger another workflow, and that requires maybe integration into an MES or warehouse system or whatever the case may be. Does your platform have that kind of like integration mechanism? Can
Yeah,
you?
exactly. So for us, what was very important is like we built it in a very open way, right? Like we understand the most value comes for manufacturers is not by having 100 isolated silos, but really everything working together. So from the beginning, we've developed APIs, right, which are very easily where like our manufacturer, our company, our customers can essentially connect their MES systems to it. We have also developed different integration protocols. So everything really from MQTT and so on. So over TCP, you can also send real-time messages. But we also have ways to send 24-volt electrical signals, right? So really all of the spectrum, which gives us, as we make the AI as well as the customer-facing UI very configurable and modular, we did the same thing about how we integrate them and send information out.
Okay, just to confirm, like you kind of like mentioned that you can also sort of like do physical actuation for like 24-volt signal. Is that
Yeah,
correct? And
exactly.
and so does it mean that you've got like an IO, like a an interface? Do you have like interface hardware that you
Yes,
supply with your platform?
exactly. So because we have the server in place, right? We connect the server actually with just like relay technology, right? Everything off the shelf. And this from there on enables us to send unlimited like 24-volt signals, right? Like, and in our dashboard, you can map different signals to different physical devices. So therefore you get the full control on what does what where.
Okay, so I mean, as you know, it's always helpful to kind of like get a real world example, or rather, specific industry solutions that you have, deployed out there. Do you have a few examples that you could share?
Yeah. For sure. Like, so if you think of glass packaging, right? Like, so everything which goes into everything from Coca-Cola bottles, beer bottles, wine, Nutella jars, pharma containers, etc. They're all made in a very hot and tough process, right? So glass forming is a very challenging environment with a lot of safety risks, especially fire risks, and it's natural material, so issues can go wrong and so on. So one clear example is what often happens is we have like this forming machine which forms glass. Glass might get stuck in this forming machine and accumulate, right? So the machine continues pouring in more glass and more glass. And if you don't detect that, you have multiple issues. One, you have huge safety risk, right? Because this can lead to a big fire, burn down the whole machine. But also you have a safety risk for the operator because he needs at some point to clean this up, and the larger the mess, the riskier it is for him. But on it, you're creating a lot of waste, and you're losing OEE, right? Because then all of this is not going to waste. You will have your equipment might damage itself, right? The mode might damage itself, etc., and you will have a long times of downtime. So in this case, what happens is our AI detects the early indicator of that, so it already sees, okay, like there is like the glass is not coming in the right trajectory or the right speed, which will lead to a jam up, and it can already send a stop signal, just a 24-volt action, stop it, alert the operator about it, So the operator then can come clean, resolve the issue. They get the video exactly of what happened, so they understand also the root cause with the classification from Serion, and they can clean everything up faster, restart, and reduce the safety risk from happening, um, reduce the fire risk. And this concept can be applied to a multitude of industries, right? Like, for example, as one of our customers in the wood industry, you have these big transport of wood logs, right? Transporting from one place to another. And at some point, a wood log might get misaligned for whatever reason. And if you don't detect that early, it will lead to a crash later on the production line, right? And a jam up, and then it might break also other stuff and break the equipment. And what happens is our AI agent can see, okay, hey, I see a misalignment at this transport area, and then it can decide, do I have enough time to maybe speed up the production so it rectifies itself? Or if not, I should send a stop signal and alert the operator so they resolve it before it happens to a crash.
So, and I mean, seeing obviously there's a whole lot of changes that occur during the life cycle of your platform, or rather the models. Do you have some governance mechanism in place? What sort of governance mechanisms do you have in place for that?
Yeah. So essentially, the key point is that you monitor the performance of all of the AI models continuously, right? So you have like stability scores. You understand at one point if for whatever reason something changes in the production and the model is a bit unsure about its detection, you shouldn't trigger an action in any case, right? And then you should escalate and ask for human for feedback. So making sure that you only you only escalate a problem or you only take action like in a closed loop manner once you're super confident. Otherwise than that, you should bake the human in the loop. That's like a key point, which was essential while building that. And then the other point is enabling really this transparency about behavior and why it's like this the AI is acting in a specific way for the production team to know, okay, like, yeah, I validate this action or not. And this is actually for, in our case, super easy because we rely on video. So it's very easy for them to just like look at the video and see, okay, yeah, it makes sense or not, versus if we were doing a bit of advanced data analytics on existing data where it's maybe not very explainable on why things are behaving in specific ways.
Okay, so I mean, earlier on you brought kind of like this idea that, manufacturing problems are hard to solve, right? Because you're dealing with kind of like physical systems, also you're dealing with legacy systems in many cases. So I would imagine also kind of like this rollout obviously of your platform is not without its challenges. So kind of like to help our audience, kind of like look out for those. What are those some of the common challenges that you've seen out there, and what are the best practices that you could recommend?
I think the number one of the number biggest challenges is the one you asked me just like a few seconds ago, which is governance, right? How do you make sure that actually what the models you have in production are reliable, and also if now some user starts giving you some random feedback, thumbs up, thumbs down, it doesn't go completely bad. And this is like one of the largest challenges. And here it needs also it like one way to approach it is while you're starting with our initial customers to be fully transparent, to be explain, hey, the nature of AI, the nature of technology, the limitations, where it is, and what you're doing also to always to solve these problems. And then you need, I think, to go into production and do a lot of things and trial and error. Right. I think that's like the key point, which is not that easy in manufacturing to deploy technology while it's still not at the 100% mature level. But I think that's like a key point because I see a lot of companies, they build in isolation and then go to the industry after spending years, right, and thinking they have the best product. But then once you really deploy it in production, you see so many edge cases, so many things you couldn't have really ever thought of because it's such a chaotic environment. And that's one thing I would say is like key for success in that sense.
Awesome. Right. So, I mean, we have got a lot, like a wide range of audience here. So we've got manufacturing leaders. We've also got more of a technical audience. So specifically for our manufacturing leaders who are kind of like listening to this and thinking of, going down the path of implementing video AI, what sort of what guidance would you offer as kind of like the, getting started steps? Well, how should they get started with this?
Yeah. I think it's always good to start from a pain point rather from a technology, right? So manufacturers always look, okay, hey, what are biggest themes we want to focus on, right? And this can be really something from a high level. Hey, okay, we want to increase automation, we want to increase or enable unmanned operation of specific production areas because we're struggling to find people, for example, or we want to really prioritize safety, or we want to prioritize OEE maximization. And based on that, I think then they should look, okay, hey, what are the technologies which would deliver me the fastest ROI and get me closest to my goal? And video AI is actually one of the best areas for that because, as we discussed, implementation is super easy compared to maybe other technologies which you need to deploy in manufacturing. You don't need to involve multiple stakeholders, and you can already get very far there. So I'd really prioritize, hey, the quick wins approach, and that's what we do with our customers, right? When we first start monitoring or deploying our AI on the critical areas, and then over time we expand. But it's, I think, prioritizing this short feedback loops to validate the quick wins and build trust then across the organization and expand from there.
So and as far as deploying, do you recommend, for example, say focusing on one specific line or one specific machine and then rolling out to different factories? How should they think about, kind of like
Yeah. I,
things?
I generally believe like it's the power comes once you deploy end to end, right? Like if you just like have like a camera somewhere, like it really doesn't make sense. You want to deploy it end to end. But what I would always prioritize, say, okay, get a pilot case, like or a success case very quickly. So it's easier to choose like a plant, do a full rollout on this initial plant. And factors for the implementation is, of course, you want to have a strong business case, but mainly is also choose a plant where you have also the reward culture, good culture, right? Like reward the culture, the teams who are proactive, who want to get better and so on, by providing them the tools also to get better. And then after that, once you have this clear success case, you can very easily then scale it up to multiple plants across the group and organization.
Awesome stuff. Okay, so to kind of like conclude our conversation here, I mean, in the past few years, we've seen a huge number of startups rather, or in AI startups in manufacturing, and we've kind of like seen an adoption. I don't know how about you, but we kind of like seen a slow response to adoption coming from manufacturers as far as AI is concerned. So could you kind of like give us a picture of where do you see AI going in the future? How should manufacturers position themselves as far as AI is related?
Yeah. So I think the key here point is focusing on the quick wins, right? So there's so many potential to do with AI, right? Like I could have one thing and said, hey, I want to build the brain that runs a whole factory completely autonomous,
Yeah.
right? And probably I wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So I think the key point here is thinking of what are manufacturing incentives, right? Manufacturers is a financial control business, right? It's about how do you keep your costs down, you maximize the output with the resources you have. So it's very clear, okay, how can you deliver quick ROI, quick wins, and then expand from there. And that's, I think, something which had worked very well for us, right? We started with some manufacturers where we just like maybe deployed on one line, initially proved value there, and then now are expanding globally to their operations across 5, 6 different countries. And I think that's like a very good playbook by being able to say, hey, with very low commitment, very low investment, that's the uplift. And then you build gradual trust over time versus trying to go this to start with your end game vision right away.
Awesome stuff. So, Karim, do you have perhaps some last words for our audience or something that we didn't cover?
I just like think I would encourage generally more people to like think about prioritize technology and innovation in manufacturing, right? It's, I think, one of the most exciting industries in the world. It's also definitely one of the most critical, right? And there's so much potential for new innovation, for doing things in a better way, in a safer way, better for making manufacturing more attractive to younger generations to go work in there. So I think it should be like a top priority for every founder to think of, hey, how can I actually help the current workforce better? How can I make their life easier? But also for manufacturing leaders to embrace technology in a faster way, because at the end of the day, it's key for us as a society, right, to have a strong, resilient manufacturing industry.
Awesome stuff. So, Karim, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I really appreciate your insights. And that brings us to the end of the session.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.